The school year had barely begun when we received the news that we would have a new class teacher, Miss Turner. Her piercing gaze making us uneasy right from the start. Miss Turner was an enigma. Tall and slender with long, raven black hair that cascaded down her back, she had an aura of authority that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Her cold, calculating eyes seemed to strip away our defenses, leaving us vulnerable in her presence. In the beginning, it was the usual routine of a new teacher, taking attendance, outlining class rules, and introducing herself. She spoke with an unsettling calmness, her voice like a whisper that sent shivers down our spines. As the days turned into weeks, we began to notice something strange. Bad things seemed to happen to students who didn't follow Miss Turner's instructions to the letter. It started innocently enough, with a student named Jake forgetting to do his homework. He received a stern reprimand from Miss Turner, who warned him of dire consequences if it happened again. The next day, Jake arrived at school with a cast on his arm, claiming he had fallen down the stairs at home. It was a simple accident, but we couldn't help but wonder if Miss Turner's warning had manifested into something more sinister. Over time, more instances like this occurred. Sarah, who had talked back to Miss Turner during class, suddenly developed a severe case of laryngitis. She couldn't speak for weeks. Then there was Mark, who had laughed when Miss Turner stumbled in the hallway. He found himself slipping on a banana peel shortly after, and the entire school erupted in laughter. It wasn't just accidents and mishaps. Rumors began to circulate that students who crossed Miss Turner often experienced a string of misfortunes. Failing grades, broken friendships, and inexplicable injuries became commonplace. We couldn't help but connect the dots, but fear silenced us. We didn't dare confront Miss Turner about it. Her chilling smile, like a predator toying with its prey, haunted our nightmares. One day, as I sat in her class, I couldn't help but notice the way Miss Turner's eyes lingered on a student named Lily. Lily had been absent for a few days, and a rumor had spread that she had criticized Miss Turner in front of her classmates. That evening, as I walked home, I spotted Lily's house engulfed in flames. Firefighters rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Lily's lifeless body was carried out on a stretcher. The whispers grew louder, and the fear that had gripped us for so long reached a breaking point. A group of us decided to investigate Miss Turner's past, hoping to find an explanation for the horrors that had befallen our classmates. What we discovered was beyond our worst nightmares. Miss Turner had a history of teaching in various schools, each one marked by strange accidents and unfortunate events. It seemed that wherever she went, a trail of misery followed. Armed with this knowledge, we confronted Miss Turner, demanding answers. She listened in silence, her expression unreadable. Then, with a chilling smile, she uttered words that sent a shiver down my spine. "You shouldn't have dug so deep," she said, her voice a soft, haunting melody. "Disobedience has consequences, and you've just sealed your fate." Terrified, we fled from her presence, but it was too late. The very next day, the nightmares began. Each night, we were haunted by visions of Miss Turner, her eyes filled with malevolence, as she whispered our names in the darkness. The nightmares were relentless, and with each passing night, they grew more horrifying. It was as if Miss Turner's dark presence had invaded our very minds. We would wake up drenched in sweat, our hearts pounding in our chests, unable to shake the images of her malevolent gaze and chilling whispers. As the weeks went by, our physical and mental states deteriorated. Dark circles formed under our eyes, and we struggled to stay awake during Miss Turner's class. It was as if we were slowly being drained of our vitality, and we knew we had to find a way to break free from this nightmarish cycle. Desperation led us to explore forbidden avenues. We found group of mystics on the internet dealing with the occult. They listened to our harrowing tale with grave expressions, and their advice sent shivers down our spines. "You have encountered a malevolent force," said one of them, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Turner has made a pact with dark entities, and she draws power from somewhere. Look for something like an altar. When you find it, you have to destroy it." The advice from the mystics weighed heavily on our minds, and we knew that confronting the source of Miss Turner's power was our only hope for escape. One fateful day, while Miss Turner was occupied with her duties at school, we decided to take action and find the altar that bound us to her malevolent influence. We gathered in secret, our hearts beating with fear and determination as we stormed into Miss Turner's house. While we were looking for the altar, sinister whisper echoed through the hallway. It was Miss Turner's voice, laced with malevolence, taunting us from the shadows. "You can't escape me," she hissed. We froze in terror. Her sudden appearance was unexpected, and it seemed she had sensed our defiance. With dread pooling in our hearts, we knew there was no turning back now. I and one of my friends went into the basement while the others spread out around the rooms, and then in the darkest corner of the basement, we stumbled upon an ancient door, obscured by layers of dust and cobwebs. It was a door that seemed to lead to an abyss, and a sense of foreboding washed over us. This had to be it, the entrance to the altar. With trembling hands, we pushed open the door, revealing a chilling sight. The room beyond was a cavernous chamber, its walls adorned with macabre symbols and candles that flickered with an otherworldly light. In the center of the room stood an ominous altar, draped in dark robes and surrounded by strange artifacts. As we approached the altar, we could feel the oppressive energy that emanated from it. This was the source of Miss Turner's power. With unwavering resolve, we shattered the dark altar, dispelling the malevolent force that had plagued us for so long. The room seemed to quake, and the candle's flames danced wildly. A piercing shriek, the anguished cry of Miss Turner, filled the chamber, and we knew we were on the verge of victory. We stumbled out of the chamber, our bodies drained but our spirits triumphant. There was no sign of Miss Turner, she was completely gone. The nightmare that had been our lives for months was over. Miss Turner's hold on us had been broken, and we were finally free. Word of our bravery and victory spread throughout the school, and the nightmare that was Miss Turner became a distant memory. We learned that confronting our fears and defying darkness could lead to our salvation. But even as we moved on with our lives, we couldn't forget the horrors we had endured. The scars, both physical and mental, served as a constant reminder of the terrifying ordeal we had faced together. And the knowledge that malevolent forces could lurk in the most unexpected places haunted our dreams, forever altering our perception of the world. My story begins on a somber note, in the quiet, nondescript halls of Jefferson High School. We were an ordinary group of students, navigating the typical trials and tribulations of high school life. But the sudden passing of our beloved teacher, Mr. Harrison, thrust us into a world we could never have imagined. Mr. Harrison was more than a teacher, he was a mentor, a friend, and an inspiration to us all. His classes were filled with laughter, intellectual discussions, and an undeniable passion for the subjects he taught. We admired his wit, his kindness, and his unwavering support for his students. His unexpected death left a void in our lives that we couldn't fathom. Amid our grief, we discovered something that would forever change our perception of him. It began innocently enough, with the school's janitor, Mr. Jenkins, informing us that he had found a series of cryptic notes hidden in Mr. Harrison's classroom. The notes were meticulously tucked away in books, behind posters, and even beneath the floorboards. As we examined the notes, it became evident that they were not random scribblings but a trail of breadcrumbs leading us into the enigmatic world of our late teacher. The more we uncovered, the more unsettling the revelations became. The notes hinted at a hidden past, one that seemed incongruous with the man we had known. They spoke of clandestine meetings, coded messages, and references to an organization we couldn't identify. We couldn't believe our eyes. It was as if Mr. Harrison had led a double life, one that was shrouded in secrecy and darkness. Driven by curiosity and a desire to understand the truth, we embarked on a perilous journey to unravel the mysteries of Mr. Harrison's past. It was a journey that would test the limits of our courage and push us to confront the malevolent forces that lurked beneath the surface of our seemingly ordinary high school. Our first clue led us to an abandoned library deep within the heart of the town. Mr. Harrison had often encouraged us to explore the world of literature, but we had never suspected the extent of his own literary pursuits. The library was a forgotten relic, its shelves covered in dust, and its windows obscured by overgrown ivy. Amidst the decaying books, we found a journal that bore Mr. Harrison's name. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols, diagrams, and handwritten accounts of his involvement with a secret organization known as the Esoteric Brotherhood. The entries spoke of rituals, sacrifices, and a darkness that threatened to consume him, and the mention of Jefferson High School Room 04 only deepened the mystery. Fear gripped our hearts as we realized the extent of our teacher's involvement with this malevolent group. We couldn't comprehend how someone as kind and compassionate as Mr. Harrison could be entangled in such a sinister web. With the journal in hand, we returned to Jefferson High School, determined to find Room 04 in the basement, wherever it might be. The school's basement was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on the cracked linoleum floors. It was a place where forgotten supplies and old furniture went to rest, a stark contrast to the bustling classrooms above. As we descended deeper into the bowels of the school, we encountered locked doors and dead ends. Room numbers on the basement doors seemed to jump from 01 to 03, with no sign of Room 04. Our frustration grew, but we couldn't abandon our quest, not after what we had discovered in Mr. Harrison's journal. Then, just when hope began to wane, we stumbled upon a hidden passageway concealed behind a forgotten storage shelf. As we pushed it aside, a narrow corridor revealed itself, leading us deeper into the basement's depths. It was a place that had been forgotten by time, a relic of the school's history. At the end of the corridor, we found a nondescript door, its surface marred by age and neglect. Our hearts raced as we realized that this might be Room 04, the room that held the key to Mr. Harrison's secrets. With trembling hands, we pushed open the door, revealing a chamber unlike any we had ever seen. The walls were adorned with strange symbols. In the center of the room stood an ornate pedestal, upon which rested an ancient tome bound in leather and sealed with wax. As we approached the tome, our curiosity overcame our fear. With the careful precision of a surgeon, we broke the seal and opened the pages, revealing a wealth of knowledge that defied comprehension. It spoke of rituals, arcane incantations, and a pact made with a malevolent entity known as the Shadowed One. We uncovered the organization's sinister purpose, a quest for immortality through dark rituals and unholy pacts. As we emerged from the eerie room, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We retraced our steps through the dimly lit corridor, heading back towards the basement's exit. Each step was laden with a sense of foreboding, a nagging intuition that we were not alone in this subterranean labyrinth. Just as we neared the stairwell that would lead us back to the relative safety of the school's upper levels, a sudden movement in the shadows caught our collective attention. Figures, shrouded in darkness, emerged from hidden alcoves and corners. Their presence sent shivers down our spines. The figures were cloaked in long, flowing robes that seemed to absorb what little light remained in the basement. Their faces were obscured by grotesque masks, each one a twisted visage of despair and malevolence. The sight of them was like a waking nightmare, and our breath caught in our throats. Without a word, these sinister figures moved closer, their intentions veiled in an ominous silence. We were paralyzed by fear, our minds racing for a means of escape, but we were trapped in the depths of the schools. Suddenly, one of the figures raised a hand, and in that moment, we realized they held objects in their gloved fingers, objects that gleamed malevolently in the dim light. They were knives, wickedly sharp and poised to strike. Panic surged through our veins, and instinct took over. With a collective scream, we turned and ran back towards the chamber we had just exited. The footsteps of our pursuers echoed ominously behind us, growing louder with each passing second. As we sprinted back towards the chamber, our hearts pounding with terror, we spotted a small window set high in the basement wall. It was a tiny glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness that now enveloped us. Without hesitation, one of us rushed towards the window, our companions following closely behind. The window was narrow and covered in grime, but it was our only chance at escape. We could hear the echoing footsteps of the sinister figures drawing closer, their pursuit relentless. The glass was old and brittle, and it shattered with a cacophonous crash as we desperately climbed through the narrow opening, not caring about the cuts and scrapes that it left on our bodies. We emerged from the basement, gasping for breath, and found ourselves in a small, overgrown courtyard that lay hidden behind the school. The moon cast an eerie glow on the scene, illuminating the tangled vines and rusting playground equipment that had been forgotten by time. The following day, we knew we had to share our harrowing experience with someone who might be able to help us. We sought out the headmistress, Mrs. Anderson, a stern but fair woman who had known Mr. Harrison well. She listened intently as we recounted our ordeal, her expression growing graver with each word. With a sense of urgency, she agreed to accompany us to room 04. We led her to the basement, our steps heavy with trepidation, and our hearts weighed down by the burden of what we had seen. As we reached the door of room 04 and pushed it open, a collective gasp escaped our lips. The room was empty. The ornate pedestal, the ancient tome, and the cryptic symbols on the walls, all were gone without a trace. It was as if the room had never held the malevolent secrets we had encountered. Mrs. Anderson's brow furrowed with confusion and concern. She turned to us, her eyes searching for answers that even we could not provide. "Are you sure this is the room you spoke of?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. We nodded vigorously, our minds reeling with disbelief. We had seen it with our own eyes, the room teeming with darkness and malevolence. But now, it stood as empty as any other forgotten chamber in the school's basement. Mrs. Anderson left the room, clearly disturbed by the situation. We followed her, feeling a growing sense of unease. How could an entire chamber filled with ominous artifacts and sinister symbols simply vanish overnight? It defied all logic and reason. She promised to investigate further and assured us that she would contact the authorities. It was evident that something deeply unsettling was happening within the walls of Jefferson High School, something that had ensnared us in a web of darkness from which there might be no escape. As the days passed, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were still being watched, that the malevolence that had consumed Mr. Harrison and threatened to consume us was still lurking, biding its time in the shadows. The nightmare had only just begun, and we were left to navigate its treacherous twists and turns, clinging to the hope that somewhere, amidst the darkness, we might find a glimmer of truth and salvation.